Hello, everybody. Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest. Riker,
Yep.
The Toronto Raptors started off the Summer League pretty bad. It was a pretty rough scene, not winning a game, getting the 29th seed heading into the Summer League playoffs, and then they just amped it up. The past two games, they beat the 4th seed Denver and a top-tier Charlotte Hornets Summer League team, and some players look very good on this roster.
Yeah, well, we have our god, OG Anunoby, absent from the last game, but tearing it up. He was pretty well, I think, the only player that has been steadily performing.
Yeah, he's obviously started for the Raptors this season. He's our starting small forward. You mentioned it, our god. He was okay the first 3 games of the Summer League. Looked pretty good, better than most of the Summer League guys. His defense is still there, but played against the Nuggets, dropped 22 points after starting the game pretty slow, and he's OG. His numbers don't always show up in the box score. His impact is great, and he does look head over heels, one of the top players in Summer League. So we won't get into OG too much, but the first guy I want to talk about that's a real Summer Leaguer.
We called it, bro.
We made a video on him. What?
We called it. Diamond in the rough.
We made a video on him. Rowley Alkins, absolute beast. He's started off a bit slow, but last game hit a game winner against the Charlotte Hornets, dropping 25 points and 11 rebounds in a playoff game. I just love this guy.
It's exciting to see. We had a little bit of resistance from the commenters. How can you use a high school mixtape to judge, to assess whether or not this player will be successful? Well, you know what? We did. He looked really cool. He had some swaggy moves. It seemed like he was, he's a thick boy. We're like, he's got the skills, and then he produces. I think that he actually probably will end up being a good player, man. In all seriousness, he probably will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously you can't jump to any conclusions with good Summer League performances, but his 3-point shooting mixed with his defensive ability, his athleticism, and just he looks like a pretty polished guy coming in for an undrafted rookie. That's something very rare to see.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's good to have a player that seems to have success at an earlier age. So he had success in high school, right? He was kind of transitioned. He had to go into a different style gameplay when he was in university because that's what the coach wanted from him, right? And now he has a tremendous burden as an undrafted player to prove himself, right? So I think what we're going to see is either he will collapse into his own shadow or his own shell and, never amount to anything in the league, or he will take determination, right, and knowing that he's been a good player on different levels and then use that to drive him to become better in the league. And I think that, from what I've seen in terms of doing the research on him, he has all the tools necessary to be a solid player in the league. And the Raptors have one of the best developmental programs in the entire NBA in terms of bringing players up through the system. And I think his time will come in the, maybe not this season, in the regular rotation, but I think that if he continues to develop in the NBA style gameplay, then he has the right tools to be a good player.
Yeah, most definitely. Rowley, you mentioned it. He's a guy. I think we're both in agreement. He's not on a guaranteed deal yet. Do you think the Raptors should take a risk on him, bring him back for this season, give him a nice 2-3 year contract?
Is it a risk to do that?
For a late pick and showing, the skills that he has, and I think it wouldn't be that big of a risk.
No, I definitely think that we should keep him around. I'm excited for him. He looks cool.
Yep.
He's a cool guy, man. And I know that the fans of him, OG fans or fans of Arizona, fans of him back in the high school days, they know how good of a player he is, and I think that we should definitely keep him around. But we got some other guys too. Some other guys on this
for sure
Summer League team that we're going to chat about.
Yeah, well, there's a few guys that played on the roster last season we can briefly mention, but Malachi Richardson, he looks solid. He looks like a decent player. He hasn't really stood out as much as you'd want to see him. He's hitting a few threes. He's scoring a little bit. I think Malachi is a solid guy.
And of course, Malachi, the player that we got in return for Bruno, So he's never gonna amount to the to the hype that Bruno had. That's a huge void, can never be replaced. So
yeah,
I don't know.
But you mentioned Bruno. We've joked around the podcast about the Raptors signing a new Brazilian KD, and unfortunately for Malcolm Miller, he looked very good in flashes last season when he got an opportunity. Played in the summer league, wasn't too bad, and then unfortunately dislocated his shoulder. The Raptors rescinded his qualifying offer, obviously not wanting to play a later rotation guy that's not going to play. So that's just an unfortunate thing for Malcolm Miller, because I think he could be a decent player in the NBA.
Maybe, yeah. He didn't have any sort of immediate prospect on the Raptors team, right? There's really no place for him in the rotation in the upcoming 2-3 years that I could reasonably see, unless of course you have a couple of injuries that brings people up, and then you're looking at a bad Raptors team because you've lost a lot of players, right? So I don't think that this Raptors team is the proper team for him if he wants to have any career in the NBA, and that might sound harsh, and I certainly think that you're right, that when we've seen him, he played decent in flashes, enough that, we gave him the Brazilian KD nickname, so now we have to find another player, but
the new one.
Yeah, and it really sucks, man. It would suck to get injured, and then that injury is what causes you to lose a contract, but hopefully he can bounce back and make some team.
Yeah.
Who knows?
No, really good shooter. Has some size. I'm sure he'll land on his feet somewhere. I think just hoping for a solid recovery from Malcolm Miller, a guy that was also on the Raptors roster last season, who's been underperforming in summer league, is Alfonso McKinney. He's another guy that showed flashes last year, being a solid shooter, playing pretty solid, but hasn't really set himself apart this summer league.
No, but speaking of solid shooters, man. We got a guy with one of the weirder names I've ever heard. He came under my radar. I didn't even know he existed until you started talking about him, but I'll let you do the introduction because apparently he's a bit of a steal as well.
Yeah, no, Giddy Potts. 6'2", point guard, very, very solid player, big guy, kind of built like Raymond Felton. His MO, his skill is shooting threes. He can splash that ball.
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, it's not really useful on the Raptors to have just a stand-up shooter that's so short, right? If you had a Klay Thompson-esque player who's essentially, I mean, obviously you can't compare anybody to Klay Thompson. He's a very, very good player, but he has the ability to be a stand-up shooter because of his height, right? Because he's able to also defend. But if you put a 6'2" guy out on the wing, right, then he's going to be a liability on defense. No matter what, right? So you'd be forced to play him as point guard, and we already have Fred, we have Lauer, we have DeLon, so he's never gonna be on the team. That's just the thing.
If he were to make the roster, he'd be fighting with a guy like Lorenzo Brown for that fourth string point guard position if the roster stays intact. So he's a very good shooter. I think he has a lot of skills, but with this Raptors team, it's tough to see the fit. Because shooting is obviously a very valuable skill, but we have too many point guards. I think that's the issue with Giddy.
But it is interesting. Well, like, what does his fan base say about him? Because you had a couple of comments that people are saying that he is pretty good.
Yeah, no, and if you look at if you're a Raptors Reddit follower, you see a bunch of OKC and Southern States fans, NCAA fans say that we've got a huge steal in Giddy. So maybe he transcends our other backups and shows he deserves a roster spot and maybe creeps in the rotation. I don't know, Masai is very good at finding players that everyone says is a steal and ends up proving it.
Well, that's it, man. Don't put it past Masai. Best developmental program in the league. And one final guy to talk about, an NBA champion. But not as interesting as it sounds.
No, I think Raptors legend.
A Raptors legend. He just got on the team. An NBA legend.
Yeah. Well, he's NBA champion Chris Boucher. He's 25 years old. He's St. Lucian, but also grew up in Montreal. He just a very big guy. Against the Nuggets, he had 6 blocks and efficient shooting. He had 12 points and 6 blocks. He's an interesting player, especially if we lose Bebe this offseason.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? it's cool to have a guy with a ring. It's cool to have another Canadian boy.
Yeah. Yeah, he played one game for the Golden State Warriors last season. Had a rebound last season. So
he had a rebound.
But
Oh, man.
he has more rings in the NBA than he does points. We'll talk about.
Wow, that's an interesting stat line. Could he be a White Mamba-esque player, right? Because that's one of my favorite monologues ever in the league was when the White Mamba, he won championship with Boston in the interview, in the post-game interview, and after they won the championship, they're like, what are you going to tell your kids? You know, you didn't play any minutes this entire playoffs. And he's like, yeah, not this season. He's like, but 10 years down the road, I'll tell them that I was a starting player and the finals MVP. And I just think that's maybe Chris Boucher, maybe he's saying the same thing.
Yeah, no, most definitely. But definitely has he's skinny. He's 6'10", smaller guy, only 200 pounds. He weighs less than Giddy Potts, actually, at 6'10".
Giddy
so,
Potts.
You know, he's a raw guy. He's older than most of these prospects that you'd like to see, but maybe he can make the roster, especially if Bebe leaves and we need to fill that backup center void.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, it's interesting. And hopefully the Raptors Summer League team can swing it around, keep winning games, and maybe win the championship.
Yeah, that's a key. Nick Nurse, it's all about that playoff basketball. It's like the opposite of the regular season Raptors. We've been known as a regular season powerhouse, then choking the playoffs, but the summer league team has been doing the opposite,
choking in the regular games and overachieving in the playoffs. Love it.
Love it. Hopefully that translates to this season now. But let us know what you guys think. What players on the summer league roster would you like to see come up to Toronto, make the roster, make the training camp deals? Let us know in the comment section below. You're the best for listening. Check out the Instagram, the Twitter, all that cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. Cheers.
Cool. Peace out.